Chapter 137. Han Shuo didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but there was nothing he could do. He could only comply with Phoebe's tugging, and the two of them walked to the dance floor. After arriving at the dance floor, Han Shuo saw businessmen and some dignitaries, all holding the waists of young ladies as they danced gracefully on the dance floor. When Han Shuo was brought to a corner by Phoebe, he stared blankly and didn't move at all. He only narrowed his eyes to observe the dance steps of these people, hoping that it wouldn't be too embarrassing later. "Come, put your arm around my waist." Phoebe twisted her body and stood face to face with Han Shuo. She raised her slender jade-like hand, and her left hand had already fallen into Han Shuo's right hand. Then Phoebe's right hand twisted Han Shuo's left hand and placed it on her own waist. As soon as Phoebe's small hand fell into Han Shuo's big hand, Han Shuo's heart fluttered for no reason. The smooth, warm, and boneless little hand was very comfortable to the touch. Han Shuo couldn't help but pinch Phoebe's palm, causing Phoebe's entire body to tremble slightly, and her cheeks unknowingly became rosy. Glaring at Han Shuo, Phoebe said softly, "Don't misbehave." When Han Shuo's big hand fell on Phoebe's waist, the two of them were so close that they could smell each other's scent. Even when they spoke, the breath in their mouths would blow into each other's nostrils and mouth. "Let's go, I'll lead you to dance. Just follow my rhythm." Phoebe didn't dare to look directly at Han Shuo. She lowered her head and said softly. She took a deep breath and put her empty little hand on Han Shuo's shoulder and slowly walked to the dance floor. Accompanied by the melodious and beautiful music, Phoebe seemed to open up her heart. She didn't continue to be reserved and didn't dare to look directly at Han Shuo. Her beautiful eyes stared deeply at Han Shuo, and she explained the essentials of the dance to Han Shuo in a low voice. With Han Shuo's current eyesight and intelligence, he had already understood the rhythm of the dance after a round of observation just now. After listening to Phoebe's careful explanation and following Phoebe's lead for a few steps, he immediately grasped the essentials. His initial unfamiliarity slowly became proficient. Phoebe was a sword master, and her own strength was great. Her body's flexibility and agility were naturally extraordinary, and Han Shuo, who had experienced the refinement of magical yuan, had all aspects of his body that surpassed ordinary people. When the two's bodies were close together, their coordination reached the same level, and their dance immediately became very harmonious and moving. Their bodies leaning against each other, and their hands holding each other, their coordination was very tacit. Often, when Phoebe sent a glance over, Han Shuo would be able to understand Phoebe's meaning, and his footsteps followed Phoebe's slow and fast movements as he spun. This kind of wonderful feeling made Phoebe and Han Shuo's hearts ripple with a peculiar feeling at the same time. When the song ended, both of them felt a bit unsatisfied, and then the next song started. Phoebe directly pulled Han Shuo and danced again. The two cooperated tacitly, and the handsome man and beautiful woman danced gracefully, performing the dance song to perfection once again, attracting the attention of many in the audience. As his heart was in a good mood, Han Shuo's eyes swept around and suddenly noticed Emily, who was dancing with old Han not far away. A pair of eyes filled with jealousy focused hatefully on his body. This made Han Shuo's heart jump, and he smiled bitterly at Emily from afar. Seeing that Han Shuo had finally noticed her gaze, Emily felt a bit angry in her heart. She fiercely rolled her eyes at Han Shuo, telling Han Shuo that she was truly jealous. At this time, Han Shuo really had no way of explaining anything, and could only smile bitterly at Emily from afar. At this time, a few waiters appeared from 3 directions. Their gazes flickered, and their footsteps were light and slow, as if they were hiding something. Originally, Han Shuo didn't pay much attention, but his sensitive ears seemed to filter out the melodious music, and he heard an extremely faint ding sound. This sound was like the sound of jade or jewelry touching metal. His heart slightly stirred, Han Shuo's expression tensed, and his gaze involuntarily began to carefully examine the waiters who had just appeared. Just as everyone was immersed in the romantic dance, the appearance of a few waiters carrying trays of wine seemed a bit abrupt. In addition, although the waiters' gazes were calm, they would involuntarily fall on old Han on the dance floor, and there was a faint cold glint in their gazes. Following Han Shua's observation, Han Shua saw the waiters slowly converge in one direction from several directions. Based on Emily and Old Han's dance steps, they would move to where the waiters were in the span of a few breaths. From the waiters' gazes, Han Shua faintly felt that something was wrong. His heart stirred, Han Shua's forehead leaned forward, and he moved his lips to Phoebe's ear. Phoebe, who was immersed in the dance, instantly sensed Han Shua's movements. Her heart was thrown into chaos, and the redness of her cheeks spread to her neck. Phoebe first moved her neck slightly to the left, as if she wanted to increase the distance between Han Shua's lips and her neck. After moving like this, Phoebe quickly lifted her head to sneak a glance at Han Shua, and discovered that Han Shua's brows were furrowed. This made Phoebe's heart even more flustered. After hesitating for a moment, Phoebe seemed to make up her mind. She secretly rolled her eyes at Han Shua, and her neck no longer evaded. Her blushing cheeks seemed to be waiting for something. Those waiters seemed to want to harm Old Han and Madame Emily. I made a joke out of Old Han just now. Move over with me now, I'll return Old Han a favor. Han Shua finally moved his lips to Phoebe's ear, and spoke softly. Her body first trembled with anticipation, and when Han Shua finished speaking, Phoebe's body suddenly stiffened from softness. A trace of disappointment flashed through her heart, and she pulled away from Han Shua, using her gaze to indicate to Han Shua that she understood. Seeing Phoebe's gaze, Han Shua, who had a good rapport with her, already knew that Phoebe understood everything. Nodding his head, Han Shua didn't say anything more. He and Phoebe secretly changed their dance steps, unknowingly swapping places with another person and quickly moving towards Old Han and Emily. For Han Shua, he was of course not doing this to return Old Han a favor, but entirely because Emily was there. When Emily, who was dancing with Old Han, saw Han Shua repeatedly blink at her, she thought that Han Shua was feeling guilty and trying to explain something. She glared angrily at Han Shua and turned her head away, no longer looking at Han Shua, seeming to be at the height of her anger. Seeing that danger was approaching, Han Shua's heart grew calmer and calmer. His gaze focused on the bodies of the waiters, his mind clearly calculating the route and timing of their attack, calculating precisely when they would make their move. When Emily and Old Han finally reached that corner, Han Shua's large hand that was wrapped around Phoebe's waist suddenly exerted force, and the two spinning steps abruptly sped up as they moved towards Emily. At the same time, the previously peaceful gazes and temperaments of the fake waiters, who had been waiting for a long time, suddenly changed. A cold and sinister aura emanated from their bodies. The hands holding the wine trays suddenly raised with force, and the wine trays flew fiercely towards Emily and Old Han. Their bodies also moved at the same time, daggers sparkling with cold light piercing towards Old Han and Emily like lightning. Emily and Old Han, who had been dancing to the melodious music, suddenly had a drastic change in their expressions. However, when they reacted, the fatal attacks were already within reach. A dagger pierced towards Emily, and 4 aimed at Old Han. A total of 5 assassins moved nimbly, and their actions were clean and efficient. One could tell that they were veterans who had undergone arduous training with a single glance. A shrill whistle suddenly sounded, seeming all the more ear-piercing amidst the melodious music. The Demon Slayer edge shot out of his sleeve like lightning according to Han Shua's will, aiming straight for the dagger piercing towards Emily. At this moment, Han Shua and Phoebe happened to arrive at Old Han's side amidst the rapid rotation. Before the assassin could react, they had already rushed into the other 4's encirclement. Han Shua and Phoebe, who had been prepared for this, made a move at the same time. Han Shua blocked the blow with a dagger forged by the dwarves, while Phoebe spun her long sword and hit the 2 daggers hard into the sky. Seizing this opportunity, Han Shua's back slammed fiercely, attempting to push Old Han away from danger. Contrary to Han Shua's expectations, this sudden collision didn't knock Old Han away. Old Han's upper body swayed slightly, his large hand suddenly grabbing at the air, grabbing a flying wine tray. After smashing it backwards, he blocked the last dagger stabbing at him with a loud clang. Han Shua and Phoebe, who had suddenly rushed out, blocked the 3 daggers stabbing at Old Han and completely disrupted the assassin's plans. The 5 attendants looked at each other and didn't make another move. They quickly retreated outside as screams and ghostly screams rang out from the dance floor. Everyone dodged in a panic. Old Han and Phoebe each kept an eye on an assassin and immediately chased after them. Han Shuo swiftly dashed to Emily's side when Old Han and Phoebe had made their move. He grabbed Emily's hand and asked lowly, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Hurry up and chase after the assassins." Emily was worthy of being a senior executive of the Dark Mantle. She didn't reveal the slightest bit of panic and immediately yelled at Han Shuo. "It's not my business. As long as you're all right, everything else has nothing to do with me." Han Shuo shook his head and casually picked up a wine glass beside him to pour himself some wine. He stood motionlessly in the same spot as he watched Emily slowly drink her wine. He didn't have any intentions of getting up. You hateful bad brat." It was obvious from Han Shuo's words that he placed Emily's safety first and couldn't be bothered with anything else. Emily was both angry at Han Shuo for being disobedient and touched by Han Shuo's concern when she heard him say this. She called out in rebuke. The dance floor had long since become a chaotic mess at this time. The merchants had all lost their heads out of fear and fled towards the plaza outside of the dance floor when they saw the sudden change. No one noticed Han Shuo and Emily's conversation. Han Shuo and Emily finally walked outside when they saw that there were fewer and fewer people on the dance floor. A shrill whistle sounded when they reached the door. The Demon's Lair edge passed through the panicked crowd and abruptly landed in Han Shuo's palm, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. "The person who tried to assassinate you just now is already dead," Han Shuo said faintly to Emily after putting away the Demon's Lair edge. The Demon's Lair edge had flown close to the ground just now and naturally hadn't been discovered in the panic of the bystanders. However, Emily, who was walking beside Han Shuo, had seen the Demon's Lair edge miraculously fly back on its own and then hide in Han Shuo's sleeve. She was immediately dumbfounded. "Just what is the weapon you used?" Emily's voice trembled as she looked at Han Shuo in disbelief. The Demon's Lair edge, which could fly according to one's will, could naturally be described as unfathomable in this world. It was within reason for Emily to have such a shocking reaction. Smiling slightly mysteriously, Han Shuo explained confidently, "This has something to do with the martial arts technique that I practice. It's hard to explain to you, but you only need to know that my weapon is indeed a bit different. That's enough." "Bad boy, just how many secrets are hidden on your body?" Emily's beautiful eyes sparkled as they focused on Han Shuo's body, asking with extreme curiosity. Shrugging, Han Shuo smiled faintly and didn't say a word. His expression was enigmatic, making Emily's teeth itch with anxiety. She wanted nothing more than to disregard her bearing and bite him on the spot. As Han Shuo and Emily conversed in low voices, the chaotic scene was gradually brought under control. After a while, Phoebe and Old Han returned from several directions, including the somewhat flustered finance minister Evie and the gloomy Lawrence. One escaped and the rest committed suicide. We couldn't find any clues from their bodies. When Phoebe arrived, she first looked in surprise at Han Shuo and Emily and then spoke to Han Shuo in a low voice. Before Phoebe and the others had returned, Han Shuo and Emily had already distanced themselves from each other. Their expressions had also returned to normal and they didn't display anything out of the ordinary. Therefore, although Phoebe was curious as to why Han Shuo wasn't chasing after the killers and was with Emily, she didn't ask much. "Young man, thank you for lending a hand and saving me and Emily." Old Han smiled approvingly at Han Shuo when he came over. "Don't mention it, just think of it as me repaying you for making fun of you just now. Heh, even if old Mister is truly narrow-minded, you'll be too embarrassed to make trouble for me now." Han Shuo winked at Old Han and teased. Old Han laughed heartily when these words were spoken and said to Han Shuo, "Interesting, what an interesting young man." Chapter 138. I'm sorry, our defense wasn't good enough and caused you to be frightened. Finance Minister Evie said to Han with a worried expression. Waving his hand, Han's expression was solemn as he said seriously, "Evie, don't apologize, I won't pursue the matter. Don't investigate this matter either, I'll handle it myself." Eve first breathed a sigh of relief when Han said this, and then asked in astonishment, "Why?" "Honorable father, since Grandpa Han has said so, you don't need to worry so much." Lawrence's face was a bit gloomy as he spoke to Evie. "Huh? Lawrence, you don't need to worry either. I know who did this." Han flicked a glance at Lawrence and seemed to know something as he spoke. Lawrence nodded indifferently and looked at Han Shuo and Phoebe. He hesitated and asked Phoebe, "Did Cameron force you to join their merchant alliance?" But I've already refused him," Phoebe responded. "Very good, you must not compromise, otherwise your buzzed merchant guild will face an enormous crisis." Lawrence mused for a bit and advised Phoebe. Han Shuo listened to all of their conversations and observed them for a while. He seemed to grasp something from Lawrence and Han's conversation, but because the two of them hadn't talked about anything substantial, Han Shuo didn't ask too many questions. Han Shuo wasn't that curious about other people's affairs. Seeing that it was difficult to continue the banquet because of this assassination, Han Shuo lazily stretched and said to Phoebe, "I think the banquet is over, can we leave now?" Rolling her eyes at Han Shuo, Phoebe bowed slightly to Evie and old Han, saying with a smile, "We still have some matters to attend to, so we'll be taking our leave first." Evie couldn't keep them any longer since the situation had occurred. He sighed lowly and said apologetically, "All right then, be careful on your way back. Brian, remember what we said. I'll look for you tomorrow. Don't go missing for a few days again." Seeing that Phoebe and Han Shuo were about to leave, Lawrence suddenly reminded Han Shuo not to forget their earlier agreement. Han Shuo nodded in understanding. Just as he was about to leave, Han spoke again, "So your name is Brian." "Hee, I'll remember you." Smiling without replying, Han Shuo and Phoebe left the banquet together with some merchants who had left in a hurry. They boarded their respective carriages and returned to their original route. "Who is it that wants to kill old Han? Even I know that old Mr. Han has made outstanding contributions to the Empire. Many of the current officers in the Empire's army were once old Mr. Han's subordinates. With his position, there shouldn't be many in the entire Empire who would dare touch him." After entering the carriage, Phoebe frowned slightly and spoke faintly. Just in case, the three original demons had been placed nearby and were constantly paying attention to any changes in the surroundings. After Phoebe had finished speaking, Han Shuo thought for a bit and said, "We helped old Han today, and may have attracted trouble as well. However, for your company, there are definitely more advantages than disadvantages if you can maintain a good relationship with old Han. But this matter doesn't have much to do with me. Besides, I'm not afraid of anything since I'm all alone, but you have to be careful." Flashing her teeth in a smile, Phoebe said, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." "Then I won't say more. You should be able to clearly explain what you promised me, right?" Han Shuo first nodded and then straightened his body slightly, staring at Phoebe as he asked, All right, look at you like that. That batch of treasure that I don't know where you got it from, but I've specifically had someone estimate it. It's worth more than 40,000 gold coins and is completely enough to offset all the random materials you've purchased. In addition, I've also prepared a large amount of food for you. However, it will take some time for you to get a space ring with a larger capacity, so there's no stock on the market for the moment." The attack at the banquet hadn't affected Phoebe's mood at all, and she spoke with a cheerful expression at this moment. Han Shuo finally breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Phoebe's words. He displayed an extremely gratified expression and said with a laugh, "I'm at ease with you handling things. Forget about the space ring, I've just obtained one with a larger capacity. You can take what you need when we arrive at the company. I've already taken the risk to gather all the materials for you when I didn't know if you had enough gold coins. Don't worry, there won't be any problems." Phoebe raised her head proudly and exclaimed softly. Han Shuo was a bit moved when he heard Phoebe's words. He understood that Phoebe had taken the risk to do so purely because of their friendship. Phoebe had even thought of paying for it herself. From this, it could be seen that Phoebe was indeed a friend worth making. Just as Han Shuo was feeling grateful, Phoebe reached out and pinched Han Shuo's leg, then glared at Han Shuo and said, "You dared to lie to me that you didn't know how to dance. Who knows how skilled you've become in the end? You're the worst." In all honesty, Before this banquet, Han Shuo truly didn't know how to dance. He had completely muddled through learning on the spot. However, due to the development of his brain, Han Shuo's learning speed was too abnormal. This caused Phoebe to think that Han Shuo was faking it. "I'm innocent, I really didn't know how to dance before, it's all thanks to your good teaching," Han Shuo complained as he flattered Phoebe. Do you like dancing with me?" All of a sudden, Phoebe lowered her head and asked softly, looking a bit shy. Nodding, Han Shuo casually replied, "It feels pretty good." "Then, I want you to promise me that you'll dance with me again next time. Otherwise, I won't help you in the future." Phoebe's face lit up as she said cheerfully, Okay, I promise. As long as you help me seriously, I'll promise you anything you want. Even murder and arson aren't a problem, not to mention dancing." There were many things that he would need to trouble Phoebe with in the future, so Han Shuo agreed without hesitation. The two of them didn't run into any trouble along the way as they chatted happily. When they returned to the Boost Merchant Guild, Phoebe took out the materials that Han Shuo needed, including several warehouses full of rations and daily necessities. She was about to fill up Han Shuo's current space ring. "Help me keep the rest of the gold coins first. These are the other materials that I need you to purchase. Continue to help me collect them." The Wood Elite Zombie and Eam Demon both needed to be refined, so Han Shuo had long since made another list. He handed it to Phoebe after taking care of the matters that needed to be taken care of. Skimming through the list that Han Shuo handed over, Phoebe looked at Han Shuo in surprise, saying, "Food for 100 people and all sorts of strange materials, just what are you planning to do?" "Heh, nothing much. Just take care of it for me. I'll give you the gold coins next time I come over." Han Shuo didn't explain too much and left the Boost Merchant Guild after saying this, returning to the academy by himself. When Han Shuo returned to the Necromancy Major, the sky had already darkened. The cold wind in the winter night whizzed past, and the bone-chilling cold made it so that no one was willing to walk outside. However, a figure stood not far from the entrance to the dorms, shivering from the cold. Her small face was red as she continuously walked around a stone statue not far away. "What are you doing here?" Han Shuo couldn't help but ask when he saw that this figure was Lisa. "I'm waiting for you." Lisa's eyes shone with joy when she saw Han Shuo appear. She quickly walked towards Han Shuo and spoke urgently. His brow furrowed, Han Shuo took off the coat he was wearing and wrapped it around Lisa. He asked puzzledly, "It's such a cold night, why are you waiting for me here alone?" Han Shuo's actions made Lisa's small face light up with joy. She then said with a frown, "My mother is sick and I need to make a trip home. I may not be back for a long time. I want to say goodbye to you." "It's just a goodbye, you can come find me tomorrow. Why do you have to wait for me tonight?" Han Shuo saw that Lisa was still shivering and hesitated for a moment before activating the mystical glacial spellfire. He slowly waved his right hand and waves of warmth surged forth, warming Lisa's shivering body. "You often disappear mysteriously because I'm leaving early in the morning. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to see you, so I waited for you here. I didn't know if you would come, but you finally came back." Lisa's body warmed up and she breathed out comfortably, speaking softly to Han Shuo. Actually you don't need to say goodbye to me." Han Shuo felt that the atmosphere was a bit off and held back for a while before speaking. Lisa was silent for a moment and stared at Han Shuo with a burning gaze. She suddenly said, "Brian, you said that you like me. Now that you're no longer an errand boy or slave, come home with me. We can be together." Han Shuo was shocked when he heard this and stood there dumbly. He looked at Lisa's serious expression and didn't know what to say for a moment. Chapter 139. I have a but full of things to do right now. I'm afraid I don't have the time to go back with you." Han Shuo mused for a moment and said to Lisa. Han Shuo had initially detested Lisa, but as they interacted more and more, Han Shuo realized that Lisa wasn't that malicious of a person, but was just a bit too pure. Especially later on, Lisa had protected him at every turn. This made it difficult for Han Shuo to be like before and harbor thoughts of revenge against Lisa. However, although he no longer detested Lisa, Han Shuo didn't have any romantic feelings for her. Therefore, Han Shuo could only casually dodge Lisa's suggestion. Lisa was silent for a short while after Han Shuo's words and then nodded. "All right then, I'll go home tomorrow. I hope that you'll be even stronger the next time I see you." Lisa obviously didn't take these words to heart as she smiled at Han Shuo after she'd finished speaking and then walked back to the female dorms alone, her figure trembling slightly from behind. Shaking his head and sighing, Han Shuo only walked back to his own dorm room when he saw Lisa disappear. Han Shuo had just pushed the door open when a long sword was already stabbing towards his chest. His expression abruptly changed as Han Shuo retreated outside without a second thought. It was a pity that the long sword was like lightning and had already reached Han Shuo's chest in a flash. Han Shuo, who'd taken a step back, suddenly fell to the side. The long sword pierced through Han Shuo's ribs and pierced deep into Han Shuo's body, instantly injuring him. The remaining force of the attack was quickly withdrawn by the ambush. Han Shuo didn't make a sound as the piercing pain assaulted his body. The demon's lair edge suddenly shot out from his right sleeve and pierced through the door, directly stabbing towards the ambusher behind the door. Dark green fighting aura suddenly shot out and the door was instantly shattered into pieces. A masked person suddenly appeared in front of Han Shuo with the sound of metal colliding. With Han Shuo's current eyesight, this level of concealment would have no effect on someone he'd met once. Han Shuo hadn't thought that Clark would be so frightening and persistent. He'd retreated in a panic last night and hadn't thought that he'd be hiding in the dorms tonight to make a move against him. Because he felt a bit apologetic towards Lisa, Han Shuo hadn't paid much attention to it in the middle of the night in the dormitory. Therefore, he'd relaxed his guard. He hadn't thought that Clark would actually launch a sneak attack. This was why he'd been injured by the sneak attack from the start. As an Earth Rider, Clark's fighting aura should also be milky white. It looked like after experiencing last night's failure, Clark had finally understood that Han Shuo wouldn't be easy to deal with and was much more cautious in his actions this time. These thoughts flashed through Han Shuo's mind like lightning. Before the concealed Clark's next stab, Han Shuo looked at Clark and abruptly exerted force in his feet, retreating explosively outwards as he yelled, "Assassin!" With a bang, Han Shuo's back suddenly pressed against a solid ice barrier. When he turned around, he discovered that there was only air behind him. His heart immediately changed as he knew that Clark had been prepared this time. Han Shuo had focused all of his mental strength after Clark had appeared and could sense that there wasn't a third person in the surroundings. As an Earth Rider, Clark must have used expensive magic scrolls that didn't require magical guidance in order to be able to set up such a solid ice barrier in the surroundings. Only then would he be able to set up a solid ice barrier in the surroundings and block all of Han Shuo's escape routes, including the transmission of sound. Indeed, a back collision didn't break through the ice barrier. Han Shuo could clearly see a look of ridicule flash through Clark's eyes, which were only showing his eyes. A ball of dark green fighting aura then blossomed once again, presenting the appearance of churning waves as it surged towards Han Shuo. His thoughts moved and the demon's lair edge that had just returned to his hand suddenly whistled sharply under the infusion of magical yuan. It danced with an exceedingly scorching wave of fire to defend against Clark's fighting aura attack. It was a pity that halfway through this wave of fighting aura, Clark's eyes flashed as he sensed the strange energy that had suddenly appeared after Han Shuo's magical yuan had activated the demon's lair edge. Han Shuo then discovered that the wave of fighting aura that was churning towards him was dark green in color at the front, and then became a milky white towards the back. Without even thinking, Han Shuo knew that Clark had finally revealed his hidden strength because he had sensed an unknown energy and was afraid of making a mistake. He had completely displayed the strength that an Earth Rider should have. Although magical yuan had boundless power, Han Shuo had only trained for a few months after all. Han Shuo was certain that it would be difficult for him to defend against this wave of attacks. His mind raced with extreme speed as the three original demons circling around Clark instantly dove into Clark's body under Han Shuo's orders, gnawing away at the essence blood in Clark's body without a care for anything else. Clark, who hadn't made a sound, immediately howled in pain under the gnawing of the original demons. The milky white fighting aura that had just blossomed was mostly absorbed back into Clark's body, attempting to destroy the 3 original demons that were causing trouble. An enormous bang rang out as Han Shuo and Clark's attack, which had been condensed from fighting aura and magical yuan, finally collided. Han Shuo stumbled as his head felt a bit dizzy. Suddenly, 3 waves of piercing pain were reflected in Han Shuo's nerves. Han Shuo's somewhat muddled mind immediately cleared up as he understood that the 3 original demons had most likely been destroyed in Clark's body. Focusing his attention on Clark, Han Shuo discovered that Clark's eyes were staring at his body with fear, a trickle of fresh blood slowly flowing from the corner of his mouth. Due to the 3 original demons gnawing away at the essence blood, Clark's body must have been injured. Otherwise, he wouldn't be looking at his body with such a fearful gaze. After all, for the people of this world, having an unknown entity enter the body and gnaw away at the essence blood was absolutely an unforgettable experience. The demon's lair edge was infused with magical yuan anew and carried a scorching hot aura as it pierced into the solid ice boundary behind Han Shuo's back. A crisp bang sounded out as Han Shuo's face lit up with joy and he abruptly dashed towards the hallway. Just as Han Shuo raised his head and was about to call out, Clark, who had felt the boundary shatter, suddenly leapt through Han Shuo's window and swiftly fled outside. His figure was also a bit ragged. It looked like he also knew that his plan to kill Han Shuo this time would be for naught once the boundary shattered. Therefore, he immediately retreated. Opening his mouth, Han Shuo didn't call out. Now that Clark had left, even if Han Shuo called out, it wouldn't have much effect. Because of the soundproofing, the students in Han Shuo's dormitory and hallway didn't wake up the students in the other dormitories even though they'd experienced an extremely dangerous fight. Looking at the shattered dormitory door, Han Shuo exhaled lightly with lingering fear and silently walked in. The 3 original demons that he'd painstakingly refined had been destroyed by the fighting aura within Clark's body because they needed to restrain Clark. However, it was because of these 3 original demons that Han Shuo's life was saved. Although the 3 original demons had been destroyed, Clark's body had also been injured by the original demons gnawing away at his essence blood. Clark needed to recuperate his body in a short period of time, and it would be difficult for him to make a second move. That's good as well. If the old doesn't go, the new won't come. It looks like I can start refining demons of an even higher level. When I advance to the true demon stage and refine the Earth elite zombie and demons into the world, that will be the time of your death. Han Shuo murmured to himself. The next day morning, Lawrence found Han Shuo as promised and the two sat down in Han Shuo's dormitory. Clark came last night and I almost didn't see you. The door was still in pieces and there were obvious signs of a fight in the surroundings. Han Shuo didn't hide anything and got straight to the point. Startled, Lawrence said in surprise, "That fast?" Nodding, Han Shuo said, I didn't expect it either. However, Clark was also injured and shouldn't make another move in the short term. You don't have to worry about anything." You injured Clark?" Lawrence looked at Han Shuo in disbelief and asked in shock. "That's right, but you're wrong if you think my strength is greater than Clark's. It was pure luck that I was able to injure him. If I hadn't dodged in time, I definitely would have been killed by him. This person is truly difficult to deal with." Han Shuo's face was grave as he said lowly. Lawrence didn't need Han Shuo's reminder to understand how difficult it was to provoke Clark since he was more familiar with him. Although Han Shuo didn't say anything about last night's battle, Lawrence could tell from Han Shuo's expression that it must have been intense. No matter what methods Han Shuo used to injure Clark, this meant that Han Shuo wasn't a simple character. Therefore, Lawrence's opinion of Han Shuo rose a few notches after hearing Han Shuo's words. "With my understanding of Clark, it won't be easy for us to find him when he's injured. Therefore, he must have returned to a safe place to recuperate at this time. We can only postpone our plan to kill him." Lawrence thought for a moment and slowly opened his mouth to speak. "All right then, I just happen to have some matters to take care of, so we'll stop here for today. I'll come find you in about 10 days and we'll have a good chat then." Lawrence nodded in agreement after hearing Han Shuo's words. Lawrence took a deep look at Han Shuo before bidding farewell and leaving the place. Han Shuo also carefully walked towards the back of the mountain. He planned on first going to the Cemetery of Death to raise the Earth Elite Zombie and then taking care of the Forest Trolls matters. Chapter 140. When he returned to the Cemetery of Death, Han Shuo immediately took out the materials needed to refine the Earth Elite Zombie and placed them on top of the place of extreme Earth outside. Han Shuo wasn't in a hurry to make his move. He first ran through the refinement method of the Earth Elite Zombie in his mind, thoroughly considering the steps and areas he needed to pay attention to before making his move. First, he found the place with the densest Earth Qi in the place of extreme Earth. Han Shuo took out the Demon's Lair edge and dug out a corpse cave, using it as a place to store the zombies. All sorts of materials were placed precisely where they should be, according to the layout of the formation. Han Shuo's mind was fully focused, and he thought through everything clearly. He didn't hesitate to complete all the arrangements with high efficiency when the materials were in his hands. When a ball of black mud was placed in a concave area that Han Shuo had set up in the place of extreme Earth, a faint breeze suddenly blew through the place of extreme Earth. Suddenly, there seemed to be a faint breeze blowing in the place of extreme Earth. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that it wasn't a breeze. Instead, it was some grayish-brown gas that was slowly gathering towards the corpse cave in the center from all directions of the place of extreme Earth. The gathering of the Earth essence was a sign that the formation was complete. When Han Shuo saw this situation suddenly occur, he couldn't help but smile and start summoning zombie warriors with necromancy incantations. 3 zombie warriors suddenly appeared in front of Han Shuo under Han Shuo's summons. In principle, any zombie warrior had an extremely high chance of becoming an Earth Elite Zombie with boundless power under the special arrangements of the place of extreme Earth. However, as the main material, zombie warriors, if they had better functions in all aspects, then their chances of becoming an Earth Elite Zombie would naturally be higher. Taking a deep breath, Han Shuo once again summoned 3 zombie warriors. When the 6 zombie warriors appeared, Han Shuo ordered them to attack each other. Han Shuo didn't know which zombie warrior was better. Therefore, this method of having them attack each other was the simplest and most effective method. His eyebrows furrowed, Han Shuo watched the 6 zombie warriors fight each other. After only a few minutes, Han Shuo immediately ordered them to stop. This was because Han Shuo had already set his eyes on the largest zombie warrior. Its fighting strength seemed to be a level higher. If he let them fight to the end, then this zombie warrior would certainly not be whole. This would obviously affect the refinement of the Earth Elite Zombie. Everything was now in place. Han Shuo once again went through all the things he needed to pay attention to in his mind. He used his amazing eyesight to reflect everything in the place of extreme Earth into his eyes. After ensuring that he hadn't missed any details, he finally gave the zombie warrior the order and slowly descended into the corpse cave. As soon as the zombie warrior entered the cave, its body was already covered by the essence of Earth. The grayish-brown essence of Earth flowed in a mysterious way and slowly seeped into every corner of the zombie warrior's skeleton. The zombie warrior seemed to be a bit uncomfortable in the beginning as its body trembled slightly. However, after the absorption of the essence of Earth lasted for a while, the zombie warrior seemed to be enjoying it very much. With a faint smile, Han Shuo suddenly waved his hand. Colorful soil suddenly fell into the corpse cave, completely covering the zombie warrior in the blink of an eye. The cave was also flattened by the strange soil. However, the essence of Earth had already slowly flowed into the corpse cave and seeped into the strange soil, continuing to bore into the zombie warrior's corpse. Han Shuo had already done what he needed to do. All he needed to do now was wait. Han Shuo only knew that the zombie warrior would only be able to become an Earth Elite Zombie when all the essence of Earth in this place of extreme Earth had been absorbed and digested. However, Han Shuo wasn't too sure how long this process would take. Therefore, when he saw that the situation was on track, Han Shuo felt that there was no need to stay any longer. After exiting the Cemetery of Death, Han Shuo didn't delay his training of magical yuan and magic as he headed south of the Dark Forest. It was indeed a bit inconvenient without the surveillance of the original demons. It was a good thing that Han Shua's 5 senses were extraordinary and he didn't encounter any major dangers along the way. Deep into the night, the snow-covered dark forest seemed to be draped in a layer of silver yarn. Under the illumination of the dim moonlight, the entire dark forest was enveloped in a tranquil and peaceful atmosphere. Han Shua sat cross-legged on the thick branches of a towering tree, his entire body shivering. Clouds of thick, jet-black magical energy curled around Han Shua's body, and the bright moonlight was completely unable to penetrate this layer of darkness. After Han Shua had swallowed the last divine brain fruit, Han Shua endured the immense pain as he forcefully endured the effects of the divine brain fruit, and finally reached the point of breaking through to the molded spirit realm. Along with the pain in his brain, the essence of blood slowly condensed in his lower abdomen, mixed with the magical energy in Han Shua's thoughts and soul, gradually evolving into the embryonic form of a demon infant. Clouds of magical energy flowed out from Han Shua's capillaries. The demon infant was the symbol of the true demon stage, and its existence meant that Han Shua had broken through from the molded spirit realm. This stage was a watershed in the training of demonic magic. Only when the demon infant was formed would one truly be considered to have become a demon. Therefore, it was also the most dangerous moment. Maintaining this position, the magical yuan within Han Shua's body flowed madly into the demon infant. The demon infant, which had originally been only the size of a thumb, absorbed Han Shua's magical yuan and Han Shua's essence of blood at the same time. Gradually, it grew larger and shone with a faint halo of light. In this manner, after 7 days, the demon infant was now the size of a fist. Just as Han Shua's magical yuan was exhausted and his head was a bit dizzy, his body trembled and he fell from the tree, completely devoid of strength. Crying out in pain, Han Shua was in a state of panic when he suddenly felt the demon infant, which had been absorbing the essence of blood and magical yuan, establish a mysterious connection with him. The magical yuan that had been continuously absorbed by the demon infant suddenly erupted like a mountain torrent, surging back into his limbs and bones. According to Han Shua's will, the magical yuan that seemed to be affected by the demon infant seemed to have undergone a qualitative change. Han Shua himself also seemed to have been reborn. With a thought, the mystical glacial spell fire began to circulate. After the magical yuan was infused, 2 balls of flames, one red and one purple, soared into the sky, as if he was holding 2 oil lamps in his palms, appearing quite peculiar and mysterious. With a wave of his left and right hands, the 2 balls of flames, one red and one purple, suddenly flew out and landed on 2 small trees. One of the small trees was charred and emitted thick smoke, while the other froze in an instant, breaking into several pieces with a crack and falling to the ground. Now in the true demon realm, Han Shua could finally skillfully control the mystical glacial spellfire. He could form the purple and red spellfire in his palms, and could even leave his hands to attack. This was the wondrous effect of the magical yuan's qualitative change. The demon's lair edge tore through the air, its shrill howl enchanting and soul-stealing. Some of the surrounding trees and hills were broken and exploded under the demon's lair edge's piercing. By the time the demon's lair edge made a circle in the air and returned to Han Shua's hands, the surroundings had already become a scene of devastation, like the aftermath of a great battle. Now, he could once again refine the Yin demons, which were a level higher than the original demons. With the demon infant's effects, Han Shua only needed to practice the art of the demonic 9th heavens to truly be able to fly through the air, and travel 1,000 miles in a day would be as easy as turning over his hand. Last time when he'd faced Clark, Han Shua had been on the defensive from beginning to end. However, Han Shua had already reached the true demon realm. If he were to face Clark again, Han Shua was confident that he would be able to contend against Clark. He wouldn't be able to only dodge and evade like before. Han Shua then continued to practice the art of the demonic 9th heavens, as he headed deeper into the southern part of the dark forest. 2 days later, Han Shua finally appeared outside the forest troll's village. Looking into the distance, Han Shua saw traces of battle outside the village where the forest troll lived. Some large trees had collapsed, arrows had been fired, and some broken weapons. All of this indicated that the forest troll must have experienced a battle before this. Han Shuo didn't need to think too much to be certain that the battle between the forest troll and the elves had already begun. Han Shuo circled the area and didn't find any traces of the elves. He didn't know if the battle between the two sides had ended. After summoning Little Skull, Han Shuo and Little Skull slowly walked towards the village where the forest troll lived. When they arrived outside, a few forest troll warriors walked out in full armor. When the forest troll warriors saw that it was Han Shuo and Little Skull, they all cheered at the same time, loudly shouting, "There!" and solemnly brought Han Shuo and Little Skull into the village. Along the way, Han Shuo saw that the forest troll in the surroundings were all holding weapons in their hands, ready to fight at any moment. Even the troll women and elders far away from the village were holding weapons and preparing food. After paying attention, Han Shuo discovered that the number of forest troll in the village was even greater than the last time he'd left. After a rough estimate, there were at least 800 adult forest troll in the entire village that could fight. Compared to the last time Han Shuo had come, there were 300 more. However, the forest trolls' weapons and equipment were obviously insufficient. The forest trolls at the back were only wielding coarse wooden sticks and even rocks, as well as some rusty iron weapons. Some of them had even begun to munch on tree bark and weeds. It appeared that they were already running low on food. Chapter 141. Han Shuo's arrival was met with unanimous cheers from the forest troll. The old priest trembled as he walked over and immediately knelt down, crying out with tears in his eyes, "Goddess Dadera and her emissary, you've finally returned." Taking in the situation around him, Han Shuo suddenly had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. Logically speaking, these forest troll were the greediest of plunderers and Han Shuo should loathe them. But now that he saw these forest troll treat him as a divine emissary and listen to all of his orders, Han Shuo suddenly felt that they weren't so detestable after all. Plundering was the nature of this race. According to the rules of survival of the fittest in the dark forest, their actions were acceptable. Just like how some large magical creatures had a natural instinct to hunt down lower-level magical creatures to eat, the forest troll did the same. All the forest troll, young and old, were looking at him anxiously as he looked around. Their gazes were the most devout trust of a religious disciple, as if they could die and live without a second thought with just one command from him. This kind of feeling made Han Shuo feel a bit peculiar. "Don't worry, your goddess Dadera will never abandon you." Looking around, Han Shuo was silent for a while and then spoke in a low, solemn voice. The old priest translated with tears brimming in his eyes. All of the forest trolls raised their empty sacks and cheered loudly. It seemed that Han Shuo's one promise was enough to make them forget all of their predicament. He took out sack after sack of rations from his space ring and piled them on the stone ground that had been cleared of snow. All kinds of thick cotton clothing and daily necessities appeared in front of the forest troll, causing the forest troll, who'd endured the hardships of winter, to dance with joy. "These things have all been prepared for you this winter. The rations in these warehouses are enough for you to safely survive this winter without raiding. Goddess Dadera has gone out to gather these things for her people." Han Shuo's low voice rang out melodiously throughout the entire forest troll village. All the forest troll knelt down under the old priest's tearful lead. The troll leader then commanded his men to carry the rations and daily necessities back to the cave behind the village under the old priest's orders. Han Shuo followed behind the old priest and came to the newly refurbished temple in the village. Not only was there a little skull, but even a statue of Han Shuo had been erected. This made Han Shuo feel even more peculiar. It was as if he'd truly become their protector. "When I came in just now, I saw traces of fighting outside the village. Did those annoying elves start a war again?" After entering with Little Skull, Han Shuo gave an order. Little Skull sat at the head of the table, and Han Shuo sat down beside Little Skull. He looked at the old priest and asked, "Reporting to the oracle, it is indeed those annoying elves who have come to start a war again. But don't worry, oracle, your brave people will never let the elves have their way. Under the radiance of Goddess Dadera, the elves will definitely retreat pathetically once again." The old priest's face blossomed with divine light as he shouted confidently. Waving his hand, Han Shuo stopped the old priest from continuing his bragging. He thought for a moment and said, "The rations and daily necessities we've brought this time should be enough for you all to use for the entire winter. If there are merchants who want to trade for those weird things from you, you can trade with them. Also, don't go out and plunder for the time being without my orders. If we're going to do something, we'll do it in large numbers. Goddess Daoism will find a target and notify you, so you don't have to worry about not having any work to do. Also, how many elves have come this time, and when did they start fighting with you? Tell me everything in detail." Under Han Shuo's orders, the old priest didn't ask why and agreed to Han Shuo's requests. He immediately ordered a forest troll warrior beside him to inform the troll leader of Han Shuo's 2 requests. The old priest then explained the battle with the elves in detail to Han Shuo. From the old priest's words, Han Shuo knew that the elves would always have a great battle with the forest troll every winter. This was because it was only at this time that the forest troll's rations, daily necessities, and weapons could not be guaranteed. This was also the time when the forest troll's battle strength was at its lowest. This time, the elves were the same as previous years, taking advantage of the fact that the forest troll couldn't plunder in the cold of winter to launch an attack. However, the elves were inferior to the forest troll in numbers and couldn't gain the absolute upper hand every time. They just launched a probing attack before hiding away to discuss their next step. From the old priest's words, Han Shuo knew that the forest troll had many tribes of various sizes within the dark forest. Due to the duty of protecting the Great Daoism sacred ground and the fact that there were over 500 forest troll warriors in this tribe, the old priest's forest troll tribe had a certain degree of restraint over the other forest troll races in the dark forest. Now that Little Skull and Han Shuo had appeared, the old priest used the name of Little Skull and Han Shuo to issue an order and gather all the forest trolls scattered throughout the dark forest, intending to teach the elves a painful lesson. Because the Great Daoism sacred ground was the goddess of the forest troll, the influence of Little Skull's appearance was immeasurable. Therefore, over 300 forest troll from 4 small tribes had rushed over in just 10 days, intending to worship the radiance of Little Skull. According to the old priest's words, the forest troll of each tribe in the dark forest would gather together in a short amount of time. When that time came, not only would the elves' attack be difficult to achieve the desired results, they might even suffer great losses. Han Shuo had originally been worried that the elves would slaughter more than half of the forest troll. He hadn't thought that because of Little Skull's rallying power, the forest trolls scattered throughout the dark forest, who had never interacted with each other, would all rush over as if on a pilgrimage. From the old priest's words, Han Shuo knew that when these forest troll all gathered together, their numbers would be no less than 2,000. There seemed to only be a few hundred elves in the dark forest. Although they had a few sharpshooters and mages, it was very likely that they would lose everything when faced with the forest troll, who outnumbered them several times over. Rubbing his head, Han Shuo felt a bit of a headache. He thought for a moment and said, "It looks like the elves should be the ones worried this time. It said that the elves are quite wealthy. I think we should rob them all." "What does the messenger mean?" The old priest started and asked in confusion. "Do you know where the elves live in the dark forest?" Han Shuo thought for a moment and asked. The old priest started and furrowed his brow in thought. He finally said, "We know the general location, but we've never gone in." Nodding, Han Shuo smiled and said, "Then that's good. When the forest troll of the other tribes come over, they'll stay behind and hold the elves back. Our tribe will head to where the elves live and take advantage of this opportunity to rob the elves' homes." "But messenger, why don't we stay behind and gather with our brothers from the other tribes to kill all the elven warriors together? These elves are truly despicable. They'll always cause trouble and endlessly sabotage our operations. They'll even take advantage of the winter to start battles with us every year. Many of our tribesmen have been killed by the elves in recent years." The old priest started and finally didn't blindly listen to Han Shuo's suggestion for the first time. Instead, he asked in confusion, "It's the nature of us forest troll to rob, not kill. In addition, the elves in the dark forest aren't the entirety of this tribe. If we kill all the elves here, it'll bring us even more trouble. There's no need for this. To Han Shuo, there was indeed no need for the forest troll and the elves to fight to the death. In addition, Han Shuo didn't want to kill all the elves either. What Han Shuo needed now was wealth. He needed large amounts of money to support his training in magical yuan and magic. This was why he'd made this suggestion. Although he still didn't quite understand, the old priest didn't continue to speak. After a few more days, more forest trolls rushed over from all directions one after another. After Han Shuo and Little Skull received a tidal wave of cheers and devout worship, a portion of the foreign forest trolls stayed behind to face off against the original elves. Han Shuo, Little Skull, and the 500 forest troll from the old priest's tribe headed towards the village where the elves lived. In the frigid winter, the 500 forest trolls carried enough rations, thick cotton clothing, and sharp weapons in their hands as they headed deeper into the dark forest. Chapter 142. The depths of winter had arrived, and the frigid winds howled harshly, bringing with it a flurry of snowflakes. The bone-chilling cold made the forest troll, who had lived in the dark forest for a long time, feel their hands and feet turn icy cold. It was a good thing that Han Shuo had brought enough rations and thick clothing with him this time. Otherwise, this harsh winter would have been a disaster for the forest troll. Han Shuo and the forest troll ventured deeper into the dark forest over the next few days. They didn't head south this time, but headed west from the start. Han Shuo had the forest troll build a simple palanquin over these few days, and he silently trained in the art of the demonic ninth heavens. The art of the demonic ninth heavens required magical yuan to be infused into the meridians of the hands and feet, and then used a special method to activate the magical yuan to fly into the sky. After the foundation training of the 3 levels of the solid, open, and molded spirit demonic arts, Han Shuo, who had now reached the true demon realm, was much faster in training the art of the demonic ninth heavens than when he'd first trained the mystical glacial spellfire. Because his meridians had already been expanded and strengthened, Han Shuo didn't feel the slightest hindrance when he followed the path of the art of the demonic ninth heavens. In the following days, Han Shuo didn't continue to stay in the palanquin. He found a random excuse to stay in the back and secretly tried flying with the art of the demonic ninth heavens. Knowing how to use it was one thing, but there were still a few tricks to truly fly in the air. Han Shuo tried many times, but was only able to rise into the air. He still wasn't proficient enough in controlling the direction and fell from the sky many times. On this day, the heavy snow stopped wreaking havoc on the land, and the forest troll also stopped in front of a mountain valley. Han Shuo, who was still trying to quickly finish training the art of the demonic ninth heavens, immediately stopped training when he discovered that the forest troll had suddenly stopped and quickly rushed to the front from the back. Emissary, that mountain valley should be where the elves live. A long time ago, our 2 children saw a large number of elves in the vicinity. When Han Shuo walked in front of the old priest, he pointed at the snow-covered valley and explained to Han Shuo respectfully. Taking a deep breath, Han Shuo squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. Unfortunately, because of the snow covering the trees and ground, Han Shuo could not see what was in the distance. Han Shuo chanted a mysterious magic incantation in a low voice. Then, an oily green halo flew out from Han Shuo and headed towards the snow-covered mountain Tanai. Life detection was a mid-rank necromancy spell, and one that Han Shuo had only recently mastered. Life detection was a spell that did not have any attack function. As the name suggested, it was only used to search for life. It was useful in unknown environments. As soon as the spell was deployed, Han Shuo squinted his eyes to feel. Where the life detection spell passed, Han Shuo did not feel any traces of life. When the spell circled the outskirts of the mountain valley once, it disappeared without a trace due to the exhaustion of mental strength. There are no traces of life in the mountain valley, but we can go in and take a look. If the elves really live here, they must have left some clues on the trees. If we can find the houses that the elves live in here, then that would be the best. Han Shuo thought for a moment and instructed the old priest. Han Shuo and the forest troll warriors were in front, and the troll hunters and priests were behind them. They cautiously and slowly made their way into the depths of the mountain valley. Their feet made crunching sounds as they stepped on the snow. When the troll warriors in front of them entered the mountain valley, they waved the weapons in their hands and shoveled away the snow on the surrounding trees. They kicked the snow on the ground with force, wanting to see if there were any clues left behind. A cry of surprise came from a young forest troll. When Han Shua's ears caught the cry of surprise, his body shot in that direction like lightning. But when Han Shua stood at the source of the sound, he suddenly discovered that the forest troll that had just cried out had disappeared. Furrowing his brow, Han Shua listened attentively to the movements in his surroundings. He then walked a few circles on the snowy ground and finally stood on a messy patch of snow. He suddenly stomped down with force. With a plop, Han Shua's body suddenly dropped down and landed in a pitch-black hole in the span of a breath. The young forest troll's cry of surprise came from a remote corner not far away. In the pitch-black hole, it was very ear-piercing. Han Shua's body had long since adapted to the darkness. He rolled his eyes and Han Shua discovered that the cave he was in led to somewhere underground. After careful observation, Han Shua discovered that the cave entrance was very wide, and there were traces of footsteps as it extended downwards. Could it be that the elves who worshipped the goddess of nature and loved the forest had all come to live underground? Han Shua was a little confused. After a momentary daze, he activated the art of the demonic ninth heavens, and his body slowly rose into the air. When he landed, he clenched his fist and punched out, destroying the snow that covered his head. The forest troll that had fallen carelessly cried out in surprise for a while. His eyes gradually adjusted to the darkness, and he groped his way up. A strange whistling sound suddenly came from the depths of the ground. Han Shua's heart jumped, and he once again released the life detection spell, targeting the source of the sound deep underground. As soon as the life detection spell was released, Han Shua sensed an enormous amount of traces of life. He was immediately startled and abruptly rushed out of the cave, raising his head and letting out a shrill howl. The old priest heard Han Shua's cry and approached from afar inquiringly. In the process, the forest troll that had fallen down also climbed out from the hole. The troll warriors that had been scouting the situation in the surroundings all rushed over with their weapons in hand. After clearing away the snow at the entrance of the hole, a deep hole that could fit 3 or 4 people side by side was revealed. A few arrows whistled through the air at high speed, startling the forest trolls who'd craned their necks to see what was going on. The old priest was furious and was about to give the order to attack the life in the hole, but Han Shua extended a hand to stop him. The elves loved nature and probably wouldn't live in the dark underground. Han Shua was a bit curious as to what kind of people were down there, so he didn't let the forest troll attack immediately. With a few whooshes, a few figures shot out from the hole. Sharp ears and handsome looks were the unique characteristics of the elves, but these elves had black and dark purple skin and silver-white hair, which made them seem so different. "It's the dark elves." The old priest cried out in surprise when he saw these strange elves appear. With the old priest's shout, Han Shua finally reacted. As elves, they had abandoned peace and nature, and their faith in the goddess of nature, and instead worshipped the Queen of Darkness, Rose. They had lived in the dark underground for a long time, and their skin had turned black and dark purple. They had evil personalities and they burned, killed, and plundered everywhere. They existed as a matriarchal family, with females as the main leaders. In the underground world, they were the same as the forest troll, an evil race that was full of evil deeds. As the first few dark elves rushed out, more dark elves slowly surged out. After they appeared, they first guarded the hole, holding weapons in their hands as they stared unkindly at Han Shua and the forest troll. Han Shua waved his hand, indicating that the old priest shouldn't act rashly for the time being. He slowly spread out towards the back, but kept his weapons pointed at the dark elves that were gradually appearing, guarding against any sudden attacks. Each of the beautiful and revealing female dark elves had an impressive figure. Even in the cold winter season, they didn't seem willing to cover up their skin. Although their dark purple skin was strange, it had another kind of magical attraction. After a while, a coquettish dark elf noblewoman also walked out. She wore a soft fur coat that faintly revealed her beautiful legs and voluptuous breasts. This beautiful dark elf madam looked at the forest troll around her in surprise after walking out of the cave. She smiled coquettishly and asked in the common language, "So it's the brave troll friends. Why have you come here?" The old priest naturally knew that he'd found the wrong person at this time. As a sage of the forest troll, the old priest's knowledge was extraordinary, and he naturally understood that these evil dark elves weren't good people either. He snorted lightly and responded, "Our children have discovered traces of large numbers of elves nearby. Because we forest troll have an irreconcilable grudge with the elves, we've come to destroy these elves." The coquettish madam's attitude became much better after these words were spoken. She nodded and said, "We also have an irreconcilable grudge with them who live above ground. Every once in a while, the surface elves will come here and try to enter the underground world to attack us. The large number of elves you've discovered must be coming here to start a war with us. Heh, I've long since heard of the godly bravery of you trolls above ground. It looks like we have a common enemy." The old priest fell silent after her words and then turned to ask Han Shuo respectfully, "Emissary, what should we do next?" Han Shuo wanted to rob these dark elves, but he didn't know just how many of them there were, nor did he know how strong their fighting strength was. Therefore, he pondered inwardly. The coquettish dark elf madam was quite surprised at the old priest's question towards Han Shuo. Although Han Shuo was wearing a black robe that concealed his entire body, his build was noticeably smaller than that of the forest troll. It was obvious that they weren't of the same race. The old priest's respectful attitude naturally surprised the beautiful madam. "Brave friends, our family is currently facing an attack from a dark dragon. If you're willing to lend a helping hand, we can offer a cart of gold and jewels as our greatest thanks. If you can kill that dark dragon, everything he has will belong to you." The dark elf madam suddenly opened her mouth at this moment when she saw Han Shuo standing there silently. Han Shuo started. He hadn't thought that the dark elves of this family would be facing an attack from a dark dragon. As an evil dragon, dark dragons also like to live in the dark underground world. It was indeed very unlucky for the dark elves to run into a dark dragon. Frowning, Han Shuo thought for a bit and felt that this dark elf's proposal was a bit tempting. Although the dark dragon's strength was extraordinary, it shouldn't be impossible to kill him with the dark elves of this family and the power of 500 forest troll. Every single dragon had a treasure that made people tremble. Hence, the benefits obtained after killing a dragon were irresistible to everyone. Let's take a look at the underground world first. If we can deal with that dark dragon, we'll agree to your proposal. Han Shuo thought for a bit and said, "I dare guarantee that with the help of your 500 brave troll friends, that dark dragon will die without a doubt. I'm Dana, welcome to the underground world with us." The beautiful dark elf madam said happily and then instructed the dark elves. The dark elves who had just rushed out of the cave re-entered the cave one by one under Dana's orders. Finally, Dana lifted her hips and walked down, beckoning to Han Shuo and the old priest. Following behind them into the underground world, they could take the opportunity to retreat if anything went wrong. Therefore, when he saw the dark elves go down first and Dana stay behind to take care of them, Han Shuo felt that there shouldn't be any danger and nodded to the old priest. With Han Shuo and the old priest in front and Little Skull in the middle, the 500 forest troll descended from the cave entrance one after another and walked towards the underground world where the dark elves lived. The deeper they went, the wider the cave entrance became. There were even some reddish-brown stones growing in the depths, emitting a faint light and making the underground world less dark. Chapter 143. The group walked underground for a long time, and Han Shuo discovered that the cave entrance was getting wider and wider. Later on, there were all sorts of complicated paths that led in all directions. At this moment, Han Shuo focused his attention and took a look at his surroundings, memorizing the path they had taken to come here in order to prevent himself from being unable to find the way back when he returned. When their footsteps slowed down and Dana led Han Shuo and the others to walk on foot, Han Shuo lifted his head and saw that the glowing reddish-brown rocks hung high above, just like the sunset glow on the ground. At a glance, apart from the fact that the sky above was shrouded in dark brown rocks, the scenery around them wasn't much different from the world above. It was just that it wasn't as cold as above, and the world below seemed to be a bit warmer. There are also a few races living in the underground world. Apart from us dark elves, there are also goblins, dwarves, lizardmen, and other races. There are also super magical creatures with astonishing destructive power like the dark dragon. Although there are some differences between the underground world and the world above, the overall difference isn't that great. Dana explained with a dainty smile when she saw that Han Shuo and the old priest were looking excitedly in all directions. Her charming eyes seemed to be gazing at Han Shuo affectionately. Dark elves were naturally lascivious, and the female elves were even more so. As the matriarch of the dark elf family, Dana was naturally no exception. Han Shuo understood the meaning behind her gaze with a single glance. Why did that dark dragon attack your family, and where does he live? Han Shuo didn't pay any attention to Dana's gaze and asked her about business with a frown. We didn't have any disputes with the dark dragon, but the lizard men used some unknown method to bribe the dark dragon to attack us. Recently, our family has been fighting over a piece of fertile land with the lizard men, and a few battles have occurred in between. The lizard men found this dark dragon from who knows where after they were defeated. Dana's face was a bit distressed when Han Shuo brought up serious matters. She sighed deeply as she spoke. How many people did you send to deal with the dark dragon? What methods does he have? Will we be of any use with our help? Han Shuo continued to ask. Our family has over 300 dark elf warriors and has already fought the dark dragon once. The dark dragon's body is very sturdy, with only its head and neck being a bit weaker. It can spit out corrosive dragon breath, and can also spit out flames that seem to be mixed with magma. We used magic and arrows to attack it from afar. We've lost over 20 dark elves during this time, but we've also successfully wounded it. It's now hiding in a swamp to recuperate. If you add 500 forest troll warriors, I'm certain we can kill it. Dana answered confidently in response to Han Shuo's question. Han Shuo didn't speak again afterwards. Dark elves continuously gathered along the way, and when they finally arrived at a dark, muddy swamp, the originally few dozen dark elves had already increased to over 300. Pay up first, we've decided to help you. Han Shuo thought for a moment and suddenly said lowly. Dana was quite straightforward as she nodded with a smile. Several male dark elves pushed 2 carts in front of Han Shuo and lifted the gray cloth covering the carts, revealing a cart full of glittering gold and some jewels that sparkled with the light of jewels and jewels. Han Shuo's eyes lit up and he silently looked over the rewards. He inwardly calculated and was certain that this cart of gold and jewels was absolutely worth tens of thousands of gold coins. He hadn't thought that these dark elves would be so rich. Han Shuo thought inwardly and walked in front of the cart of gold and jewels. He used his space ring to unceremoniously store the items in the 2 carts. Han Shuo discreetly observed Dana's reaction as he did this. Han Shuo suddenly detected a trace of coldness and mockery in Dana's eyes. After reaching the true demon realm, not only had Han Shuo's 5 senses become more profound, but even his senses had become even more mysterious. Han Shuo could miraculously sense some very minute things. Just like the expression that had flashed through Dana's eyes just now, Han Shuo hadn't even paid attention to it, but he'd miraculously grasped this detail unwittingly. His thoughts moved, Han Shuo maintained his bent posture and put away the items in the 2 carts. He silently pondered the meaning of the coldness and mockery in Dana's eyes just now. His heart immediately became a bit more vigilant, and he even more inwardly calculated a few things. All right, I've put the items away. What should we do next? Lifting his head, Han Shuo looked at the swamp as he spoke to Dana. Our race doesn't have sturdy warriors, only long-range archers and mages. I'd like to have you troll warriors take the front, and then us dark elves will use archers and magic to attack from the back. Dana said matter-of-factly. Shaking his head, Han Shuo flatly refused. No, the dark dragons are just as sturdy. Our people will be throwing their lives away if we stand at the front. If you insist on this, there's no way we can do business. If the forest troll took the front, the dark dragons would be unfathomably dangerous, and the dark elves with ill intentions would be at the back. In this way, the forest troll would be attacked from both front and back, and would be in an extremely disadvantageous position. Even if Han Shuo hadn't discovered Dana's evil intentions, he still wouldn't have agreed to this suggestion. Not to mention that Han Shuo felt that Dana had other plans, so he naturally wouldn't allow this kind of situation to occur. Dana's smiling face darkened when Han Shuo's words of refusal left her mouth. She then said to Han Shuo with a bit of anger, "Someone has to take the front. Do you want us weak tribesmen to throw our lives away? We've paid you 2 carts of gold and jewels. Don't worry, isn't it just looking for cannon fodder to throw their lives away? Leave this to me. As long as you're responsible for luring the dark dragons out of the swamp, I'll take care of the cannon fodder. That should be fine, right?" Han Shuo's voice was equally dark as he responded. A magical incantation was chanted as soon as Han Shuo's words had ended, and a zombie warrior appeared out of thin air. Following Han Shuo's repeated chants, even more zombie warriors and skeletal warriors, as well as some ghouls, appeared in front of Dana, forming a wall of flesh. "So you're a necromancer?" Dana nodded, but because Han Shuo had only summoned zombie warriors and skeletal warriors, Dana looked at Han Shuo with a bit of disdain. Han Shuo didn't mind Dana's gaze at all and asked, "How about it? Can you make your move now?" "Yes, wait for me to make the arrangements. As soon as the dark dragon leaves the swamp, you summon your creatures to take it. Your troll warriors will attack from afar with us and don't give the dark dragon any chance to breathe or speak. Otherwise, it'll be very troublesome later on." Dana nodded in agreement and retreated to the side of the dark elves. She used her eyes to observe the movements of Han Shuo and the others as she whispered in hushed tones. Han Shuo's extraordinary ears were also put to use at this moment. After focusing his attention, Han Shuo could clearly hear the contents of Dana's words. When Han Shuo discovered that Dana was discussing the details of how to deal with the forest troll, he couldn't help but laugh coldly to himself. Waving his hand to call the old priest over, Han Shuo moved closer to the old priest and gave a few instructions in a low voice. The old priest's expression was one of fright at first, but he reacted afterwards. He listened to Han Shuo's words with a calm expression and then left to instruct the troll leader, telling him to act according to Han Shuo's instructions. A young dark elf girl walked naked towards the swamp, singing melodiously as she walked. Her naked body was curvaceous in all the right places, and her dark purple skin was smooth and clean. Her butt was full and erect from the back, and her back was smooth and moving. Her entire being was filled with a bewitching beauty. Her beautiful voice sang out from her mouth, causing Han Shuo's heart to run wild. When she walked to the edge of the swamp, her cute toes stepped on the soft black mud. She playfully kicked the mud, making a sound that was neither too loud nor too soft. The center of the calm swamp suddenly caved in and formed an enormous whirlpool. The whirlpool fiercely pulled in the surrounding mud. The naked dark elf girl was startled and hurriedly dodged away in a panic, avoiding the pull of the whirlpool. The whirlpool that had been in the center slowly changed its position and quickly shifted towards the girl. Just as it was about to reach the edge of the swamp, an enormous crashing sound rang out from the whirlpool as a pitch-black dragon head abruptly poked out. Its red eyes were like 2 lanterns, and its back and sharp claws were revealed. Its body snaked to the rear of the swamp for more than 10 meters, and its body was very large. This was the first time Han Shuo had seen a dragon up close, and he was indescribably shocked. "Girl, play with me, don't run away." After the dark dragon came out, it opened its mouth and began to tease, swaying its enormous body as it chased after the dark elf girl. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.